Hey all, how are you doing? Unfortunately for all of your information, this is not a repeat of the Steel 64, and it is not a continuation of it either.
No,
But
that's a lot of
what
damage!
this video is about. It's about my top 10 F1 title deciders. This list includes some interesting and controversial races, and spoiler alert, last year's race is in this list. So if you're part of F1 Twitter, I highly recommend that you click off of this video because, well, I'm gonna be covering a topic that that F1 Twitter does not like. And be aware. Anyway, be aware. These are my top 10, not anyone else's top 10 lists. Meaning that you're gonna find some races in here that are not, that have not been on others' lists. Anyway, let's get into the video. Starting off with number 10, Las Vegas, 1981. I'm calling this Las Vegas because this race is technically called the Caesars Palace Grand Prix, which, as we all know, Caesars Palace is a famous hotel in Las Vegas. So yes, F1 race in Las Vegas in the 80s. It was horrible in every way. Nobody wanted to come see it as spectators. The track caused drivers next to strain because it was, and the first race was in extreme heat, and the track was in a car park. But we are here for the title fight. To set the scene, this time in 1981, it was between the Argentine driver Carlos Reutemann driving a Williams against fellow South American from Brazil, Nelson Piquet, who was driving for Brabham at the time. Both cars had used a Ford engine, so I don't need to cover that. I also want to mention that Jacques Lafitte was still in contention, just barely, with 43 points, while Reutemann and Piquet had 49 and 48 points. When qualifying finished for this race, Reutemann had the pole with Piquet in 4th, which seems very comfortable. Now, I wouldn't normally bring this up in a normal race, but something happened after the formation lap, which was very unusual. The Ferrari of Gilles Villeneuve, which was in 3rd, formed up on the grid the wrong way. Gilles later got disqualified because of this, but when he got black flagged, his engine blew up on lap 23. And also, I'm reading off of the script, and there's a mention in the car park, so I'm just good to go. After the lights went out, Reutemann's teammate, Australian veteran Alan Jones, took the lead easily, and he didn't give it up, and won the race. It was his final victory, and it was the last win for an Australian driver until Mark Webber won the 2009 German Grand Prix. Meanwhile, as the race progressed, Carlos Reutemann's gearbox started to give up. And on lap 17, Piquet was all over the rear of his car. With 15 laps to go, the future 1992 world champion Nigel Mansell passed Piquet for 4th. But then, on lap 69, Carlos Reutemann got passed by John Watson and Jacques Lafitte, dropping him down to 8th and out of the championship. And, well, who came out on top? Well, Nelson Piquet did. This probably was the most painful for Carlos Reutemann, as he never wanted the title again, and this was the closest he ever got to the title.
No, that's a lot of damage!
Number 9, Europe 1997. To set the scene here, Michael Schumacher was leading the championship with 78 points, with Williams driver Jacques Villeneuve second on 77 points. Heinz-Harald Frentzen was third with 41, John Alesi fourth with 36, and David Coulthard fifth with 30. The race was supposed to be held as the Portuguese Grand Prix, but the Estoril track had financial issues, and the engine supplier Renault did not want to have their possible last race happen in Japan. And well, qualifying is not something I usually talk about much more in the race, in the video. But this time it was interesting. The three drivers had pole. Jacques Villeneuve, Michael Schumacher, and Heinz-Harald Frentzen all set a time of 1 minute 21 seconds and 72 thousandths of the second. Which, by the way, I believe that's modern F1 quality timing. So yeah, the race started with Schumacher leading the first 21 laps, although Villeneuve got the pole, because he said it first. But on lap 22, the lead changed to Villeneuve. They swapped the lead a couple times until lap 47. This is kind of one of the reasons why I said F1 Twitter should click off of this video. On the 47th lap, entering Curva Dry Sec, and by the way, that is a real corner on the circuit de Jerez. Schumacher made an aggressive dive bomb on Villeneuve, which ended up, which I'm not sure if it was a dive bomb, but whatever kind of overtake he was doing, he reversed halfway through the overtake, causing a collision, and that banged the side pod of him, of Villeneuve's, but didn't take him out of the race. On television at the time, Martin Brundle said, "That didn't work, Michael. You hit the wrong part of him." Schumacher had been beached in the gravel, and Villeneuve had to nurse a stricken car to at least 2 points, which at the time was 5th place. Villeneuve took the lead, but he had started to get issues on last lap, where Mika Häkkinen and David Coulthard, both racing for McLaren, led the team home to get McLaren a 1-2 finish, but Villeneuve got third and took the title with it. The last point I'm going to bring up here is the fact that in the post-race, after the race, Michael Schumacher got disqualified from the entire 1997 season due to his attempt to take Villeneuve out of the race, which meant that Heinz-Harald Frentzen gained the runner-up honors. Number 8, Japan in 2003. Not much to write home about here, except, yeah, but it's still interesting. Ferrari had not been doing their greatest season in rather recent years. Michael Schumacher, now is a 5-time world champion, was trying to win his 6th world title to surpass the 5 titles of Juan Manuel Fangio, who dominated the sport in the 1950s. But Kimi Räikkönen was still in contention with 83 points. Schumacher had 92. Kimi Räikkönen would be world champion if he won, and Michael scored to fail any points. Kimi already had done a great job that season, taking his first win at that year's Malaysia Grand Prix, which was his only win at the time. Ferrari as a constructor wasn't having the best season, as they were battling Williams and McLaren. They had to secure the constructors' title that season. At the end of qualifying, Rubens Barrichello was given pole with the championship leaders and starting the race from the midfield. Kimi in 8th and Michael in 14th. I don't have a lot of information about the race, but Rubens won the race, giving Ferrari the constructors' title. Meanwhile, Kimi Räikkönen got a podium. Now, before you think he's won the title, Michael Schumacher was helped by 4 retirements, and the Ferrari being at least better than most of the midfield, if not all of the midfield. Michael Schumacher got 8th place, which back then was 1 point, and because of that 1 point, he took the title. However, since it is Michael Schumacher in the early 2000s of F1, this wasn't as exciting or dramatic as some of the other races in this list. Number 7. Abu Dhabi 2016. And well, would you look at this? This might start a list of dramatic title deciders. Abu Dhabi is a track known for its 2021 race, being a bad track that kind of looks like a machine gun, and being one of the worst title deciding races that is, in some people's opinion, since Las Vegas had their last race in '82 as Caesar's Palace. But not talking about the track, we're talking about the 2016 race. Just like 2021, Hamilton was in the title fight, but instead of it being against a Red Bull, it was against his own teammate, Nico Rosberg, who had been leading the championship. And Rosberg simply had to finish on the podium, which, since it's a Mercedes before 2022, which is the year I'm recording this, it's pretty easy. Hamilton had led the most laps, with other lap leaders including Rosberg, Ferrari's Sebastian Vettel, and Red Bull's Daniel Ricciardo, who I'm wearing a Daniel Ricciardo shirt right now from last year's season. When the race got to lap 41, it got dramatic, but not 2021 levels or types of drama. Hamilton inquired the Mercedes pit wall for info on the pace of other cars. Vettel had been doing a lap of 1 minute 44.6 seconds, with Max Verstappen, who only had been pitted once and was going around the track at 1 minute 45.9 seconds. Hamilton slowed down heavily in an attempt to get other cars around him to speed up while preventing Rosberg from getting ahead, using the layout of the Abu Dhabi track to his advantage. Hamilton won the race, while Rosberg finished second, giving Rosberg the dreaded first title, and Mercedes a 1-2, which gave them a already secured constructors title. Number 6. Abu Dhabi 2021. And well, would you look at that? I told you that there'd be last year's controversial title decider in this video, and here it is. I doubt you missed last season, but if you did, let me give you a background of the setting. Not one driver was leading the championship, but two drivers. Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen were both tied in points with 369.5 points. Meaning, this race was whoever finished higher in the standings would win the title. Verstappen got pole, but then Hamilton led off after the first lap. Now, the race had some intense moments, but I'm counting this one in for the fact that it had some pretty crazy final laps. Verstappen had shown he could be the fastest driver despite not leading the race, as he had already broken the lap record on lap 39, and his teammate Sergio Perez had held up Hamilton between laps 15 and 20, which is still somehow legal after 1997 saw Ferrari boss Jean Todt request Sauber driver Roberto Fontana hold up Jacques Villeneuve. But the final laps were some of the most dramatic and controversial laps in modern F1 history. On lap 53, while attempting to fight off the Haas of Mick Schumacher, Nicholas Latifi crashed into turn 14. This brought out the safety car. Hamilton stayed out because he thought he could then win the race under the safety car. Verstappen, however, pitted for soft tires. Then, on lap 57, race director Michael Massey allowed lapped cars between Hamilton and Verstappen to unlap themselves, and then Massey then proceeded to end the safety cars the same lap, giving Hamilton and Verstappen one lap to fight for the title. Max overtook Lewis, and Max then became the first Dutch F1 champion. After the race, Mercedes launched a protest on the result, with Hamilton disappearing from social media after the race and not appearing until closer to the end of the off-season. And during the off-season, Michael Massey got fired. Number 5. Brazil 2007. To set the scene here, Hamilton was leading the championship and could be not only the first black to win the F1 driver's title, but also the first rookie to win the F1 title in their rookie season. But he had to hold off there were 2 drivers which were still in contention. Reigning world champion and teammate of that year, Fernando Alonso, and the Ferrari's Kimi Räikkönen. Alonso had 103 points and Räikkönen had 100 points. This meant that there was the first time that since the 1986 Australian Grand Prix where 3 drivers competed for the title. In the race, on the first lap, Hamilton went off track due to a brake lockup, and by the time he was ready to fight the Ferraris, he was in 8th, before passing Jarno Trulli and Nick Heidfeld for 7th and 6th between laps 2 and 6. But then things began to go downhill, due to a gearbox glitch on the Reta Aposta. Hamilton failed to find gears, and as a result, slowed down and dropped to 18. On lap 15, Hamilton took the midfield advantage and got to 11th place. As the race went on, Hamilton gained position, but only got to 7th by the checkered flag. Meanwhile, up at the checkered flag, Kimi Räikkönen won the race and took his first victory in Brazil, having came second 3 times in a row, and took his first driver's championship title. And his only one, despite nearly winning the 2003-2005 championships, only to come runner-up to Michael Schumacher in 03 and Alonso in 05. But in post-race events, an inquiry found that the BMW Sauber and the Williams cars had irregularities with their fuel. But both teams were not penalized due to the lack of conclusive evidence which McLaren appealed. The FIA rejected the appeal, but if they accepted it, that would mean that Lewis Hamilton would be world champion. Before you go on Twitter to argue that this wasn't fair for Hamilton, let me add another thing about this appeal rejection. Hamilton stated that Kimi deserved to be the 2007 World Drivers' Champion. And that nobody at McLaren had any desire to take him off of him in court. So Kimi Räikkönen won the 2007 championship from 3rd place before the Brazilian Grand Prix. Let's move on before I get too deep into talking about this race, as I have talked about this one more than others. Number 4, Australia 1986. And would you look at that? It's another 3-way title fight, but this time it's a Grand Prix from the 80s. The drivers who were fighting for the title this time were McLaren's Alain Prost, who had won the title already the previous year, and the 2 Williams drivers of Nigel Mansell and Nelson Piquet. Mansell led the championship with 70 points, with Prost in 2nd with 64, and Piquet 3rd with 63. Williams had already secured the Constructors' title in that year's Portuguese Grand Prix, but the drivers had been battling for the championship, and Prost had just been very consistent and had seen him accumulate points. The race began with Piquet leading the first 6 laps until Keke Rosberg overtook him and dominated the race until lap 62, where on lap 62, Rosberg tired first, while Keke Rosberg was dominating the race. On lap 23, Nelson Piquet spun. Down on lap 3, Ayrton Senna's Lotus had an engine failure, forcing him to retire. Senna had secured a 4th place in the Drivers' Championship that year and would eventually win the title 2 years later in 1988. And then on lap 63, Nigel Mansell's car, which had been going down the Jack Brabham straight, had a tire blowout, which resulted in a DNF. Frank Williams then didn't really feel that comfortable leaving PK out track on the same set of tires that hers, which resulted in PK going into the pits for new tires. Alain Prost won the race and took the title with him. And now for our top 3 title deciding races. But before we get into that, I would like to thank you for getting this far in the video. This is my first F1 video, and I will be doing more F1 videos soon, including a story from the 1994 season that I think is rather underrated. Number 3, Abu Dhabi 2010. So we have covered 2 3-way title deciders already that were amazing, but what about a 4-way title decider? Well, you get the 2010 version of Abu Dhabi, which showcased a title battle that was mainly against Fernando Alonso, Mark Webber, and Sebastian Vettel, who had 246, 238, and 231 points respectively. But Lewis Hamilton was still in mathematical contention to take the title, with 222 points, which was 24 points behind Alonso, in a race where a maximum of 25 points were available for the winner. Red Bull had already secured the Constructors' title with 469 points. Vettel got pole position, and Lewis Hamilton started alongside. Alonso started 3rd with Webber in 5th. As lights went out, Vettel retained pole position lead into turn 1, followed by Hamilton, and then Button was going up to 3rd after Alonso made a slow start. Meanwhile, after getting to turn 6, Michael Schumacher was trying to do too many things at once. He tried to pass teammate Nico Rosberg around the outside while battling for 8th place, which is too much. This resulted in him spinning, which then left his car facing the approaching pack, and then he got hit by with Antonio Liuzzi, which totaled both cars and brought out the safety car. Not much action happened here, with the main battle for the title happening with drivers pitting. Webber stopped first on lap 12, his stop being a 3.9 and spending 20 seconds in the pit lane, and then dropping down to 16th. Alonso followed 4 laps later, having a worse stop of 4.4 seconds and 20.6 seconds in the lane. Vettel would go on to win the race and get the title by 4 points. Alonso and Webber had their 3rd and 1st title dreams crushed by 7th and 8th places. Hamilton finished 2nd in the race, but kept 4th in the Drivers' Championship. Number 2. Japan 1976. And now it's time to talk about the only title deciding race in this list that has happened outside of the last 40 years. The 1976 season had been insane, to the point where a movie was made out of it in 2013. That year's title fight saw Niki Lauda ahead of James Hunt in the standings by just 3 points going into the race, which was amazing that Lauda had managed to do it since he had, after a near fatal crash at that year's German Grand Prix at the Nürburgring. There was debate if the race should go ahead or not, but in the end, the organizers chose to start the race, with most drivers agreeing. Others were not happy. After 1 lap, Larry Perkins withdrew his Brabham from the race, followed by Niki Lauda's Ferrari on the first lap. Followed by Niki Lauda's Ferrari on the next lap. Carlos Pace withdrew on lap 7, and then finally Emerson Fittipaldi withdrew his car 2 laps later. All James Hunt had to do now was win the title, and all he had to do to win the title now was finished 4th or better. He led comfortably until lap 62 as the track started to dry. 2 laps later, 2nd place is Patrick Depailler's rear left tire started to deflate and he had to pit. 2 laps later, 2nd place, 2 laps later, away. Andretti led then. But then after that, Hunt had started having the similar issues with tires that were similar to Depailler's, resulting in Hunt pitting for new tires, dropping him to pit and looking like Lauda could win the title after all. After overtaking Alan Jones and Clay Regazzoni for 3rd, James Hunt took 3rd in a race where everyone who finished was only 1 lap down. This was Mario Andretti's 2nd victory in F1, and Hunt had took the title. And now for 5 honorable mentions. Since I think that all title deciders that are close to, if not the final race of the season, and depending on the skill and the car of the championship leader up to that point. These honorable mentions are the 1959 US Grand Prix, the 1989 Japanese Grand Prix, 1994 Australian Grand Prix, 1999 Japanese Grand Prix, and the 2006 Brazilian Grand Prix. I know I put some big races in here, most notably the first 3 that I put in here, but I can only put 10 of 71 title deciding races in this list, as the 2022 championship is still going on at the time I'm recording this. And finally, number 1. Brazil 2008. Yes. It would be rather strange if I didn't include the 2008 Brazilian Grand Prix in the top 10 title deciders, let alone the top 3 spots. Hamilton was leading the championship with 94 points, with Felipe Massa in 2nd place with 87 points. Massa would win the title if Hamilton finished 6th or lower. Massa took pole position with teammate Kimi Räikkönen taking 3rd, meaning he could use the same line as Massa at the start of the race. Hamilton was 4th and have a 2nd behind Massa. When the lights went out, Massa retained the pole position, followed by Jarno Trulli, Kimi Räikkönen, Lewis Hamilton, and Heikki Kovalainen. Not anything important for the championship happened until the rain began to fall on lap 63, sending drivers into the pits. But guess who stayed out? Oh wait, you probably already know already. Timo Glock. Timo and his Toyota teammates stayed out because they thought they could finish the race on dry tires. On lap 69, Hamilton ran wide, which Sebastian Vettel took advantage of and overtook Hamilton, dropping Hamilton down to 6th, and then looking like the title would go to Massa. Massa then took the checkered flag and looked like he'd be world champion. But he was only world champion provisionally for 30 seconds. Because then, we all know the famous lines. Is that Glock? Is that Glock going slowly? It is! That's Glock! These lines originally came from Martin Brundle after Massa had been world champion for provisionally for 30 seconds, which meant that Hamilton had overtaken Timo Glock and taken back 5th place, which he kept to the finish line, handing the title to Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton had been world champion by 1 point on the last lap on one of the final corners. Well, those were some amazing title deciding races. Which one was your favorite? Would you have chosen different title deciding races? Let me know down below in the comments. But with that, this video is over. So thanks for watching, and I will see you next week. Bye.